Hello, everyone. Lori here. Welcome to How Do You Spirit podcast. And I am super excited today. We have the opportunity to have Austin, owner of Cat and Cauldron, right?
Yep. Hi.
With us. And because it's spooky month, Austin has lots of spooky stories for us, right?
I have as many spooky stories as I could possibly manage. The problem when you have been doing the occult and metaphysics as long as I have, it just becomes normal. And so when people are like, what's a spooky story? I'm like,
which one?
I know. Well, it's that. And I'm also like, are you talking one where I was like, I gotta run away in fear? Or is it one where you're like, okay, that was a little spooky, but I'm trying to sleep. Shut up.
Yeah.
You know? Which most of the time, that's what it is in my life.
Okay. So do spirits come to you? Like, do they just come to you? Or
yeah. So I'm a medium.
Okay.
And I'm a medium, mental medium, physical medium. Like I kind of just have all the clairs is what they're called.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just a matter of what one wants to be more active that day. And it's very strange because I just recently started ADHD treatment. I've been raw dogging life without ADHD for like 33 years, and my doctor was finally like,
let's help you.
Should we help? And I was like, please.
Yes.
And so it's been really weird how quiet it's gotten and how much more focused it is.
Really?
But, oh yeah. It's like there's like these people out here who are just like, no, medication's bad. And I'm like, I love my medications.
Yes.
Because my readings are so much more clear and concise.
So it's helped you then with
so
that.
Much.
Okay. So
much because I can actually calm and go, this is what they're saying. Instead of like, okay, is this what they're saying? Or am I getting distracted by the images in my brain?
Maybe that's my problem. Because same, I get the images and like then my mind's eye and stuff, but I will get caught up on what to ask.
Yep. Yeah.
and then I start losing it, So that's so interesting. How long have you been on the medication for then?
I just started last Wednesday.
Oh, so super new.
Yeah, really super new. And it was like I started last Wednesday, which is my regular reader shift at my shop. So that's when I'm offering all my services. The only thing I don't do is palmistry and astrology.
Okay.
And I was just like sitting there, and it was a weirdly slow day for me. Normally I'm back to back, but it was slow, and I was just like, so quiet. And so I like walked out into the shop where my counter staff was there, and she's one of my best friends, and I was like, quiet. She was like, no, there's customers, like they're chatting. And
you're like, that's not what I'm talking about.
Like, but no, like, do regular people's brains not chatter all the time?
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't know that, so I'm going to say probably not. And I'm like,
what's going on?
This is so weird. And then I was doing like live TikTok streams and like readings and stuff. And everyone was just like, you're so clear. And I just, okay.
That's so incredible.
So it's very interesting how medications can help. But yeah, I've been, my mediumship abilities started, or they came to a head around 11, like most kids. When you're a kid, you're what's referred to as the veil is very thin.
Yes.
And when you're working or growing up in that capacity, it's really interesting because I was always seeing colors around people. I was always seeing people who weren't there. I was having conversations with friends. Yeah. They were what my mother would have called imaginary friends.
Yes.
And it was my grandmother, on both my sides, who were like, no, it's the gift. It's the
so
sight.
They were supportive of you.
Yes.
That's amazing. That makes such a difference.
I cannot stress it enough. And that's probably one of the reasons why when people ask me about scary stories, that I'm like, I don't know.
What's
scary? Because I was taught from a very young age that these are just other beings who are around us all the time.
Right.
And you just have a chance to see them on occasion. And sometimes they're spooky. Sometimes they're scary. Sometimes they can be malicious.
Yes.
Most of the time they're not. And the easiest thing to do is to just sit with that and go, okay, what are you going to do now?
Right.
And so my first experience at 11 was very It was jarring. I was
Okay.
always seeing things as a little 11-year-old. I mean, I grew up in Utah.
Uh-huh.
If you haven't figured out by now, I have ruby slippers that fall out of my mouth every single time my mouth opens. But and for those of you who know, you know.
Right.
But I was just laying in bed one night and I had heard sirens going past my window. And I was like, not uncommon. I lived on a busy street, you know.
Right.
And I was like, okay, whatever. So I started going to sleep and I heard my closet door open.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, that's weird. Is my dog in here? And so I get up and at the base of my bed is a female figure with her head off to the side.
Like
Oh, wow.
cut off to the side
Yeah.
or just like moved over?
No, like cut off.
Oh my
Like
God.
think nearly headless
Terrifying.
Nick.
Uh-huh.
And she was just standing there staring at me.
Oh my hell, that's
my
And
scary.
God.
I was like, hello. And she just pointed out the window
Uh-huh.
and my grandmother who lived with us at the time came in and saw her, automatically started
Oh.
reciting a psalm because my mama was a root worker.
Okay.
So she could like rattle off psalms like at the drop of a hat. I'm
Wow.
not at that level. I know like my go-tos and that's it.
Yeah.
Most of the time if I'm doing root work, I'm like, I got my script, my Bible, I'm good.
You're right.
But she came in and she got rid of it and she went, that's how you handled that. And I was like, what was it?
Yeah.
And to my mama, it was a haint. A haint in Southern mythology and folklore, because she grew up in New Orleans and then kind of migrated with the family over to the Appalachians. A haint is a restless spirit.
Oh,
And
interesting.
So she went and she got a broom from the kitchen
Uh-huh.
and she put the broom next to the window outside of my window.
Okay, so was the broom outside
Outside the window, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Because what happens is as those spirits would come in,
Uh-huh.
it's almost like they have like an obsessive compulsive thing where they have to count each bristle before they can enter. And so
Oh, I
because of
didn't know
that, it takes forever and then the sun hits them and they disperse.
Oh
So
my
that's what she did to
gosh.
help me with that. My nonna, on the other hand, was the more witchy of the two.
Yes.
Because my nonna was from Italy. She was in Avellino, Italy.
Wow.
And she had, like, that's just what our family did. Like, both my mama and my nonna, that's what they did.
Wow.
Like, they did card readings and consultations to help make ends meet.
Uh-huh.
And so I've been around it my entire life. I've
That
been
is
Wow.
super
actively
cool.
practicing probably since I was a angsty little teenager.
Wow.
And I just went and developed it. My first professional job
Uh-huh.
was at 16 at an old shop in downtown Ogden called Capricorn's Lair. I was a
Wow.
reader there. And it was very weird as a 16-year-old giving readings to older people than me.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
you know, I had to have some way to pay my way. My friends and I want to go to the theaters.
Right.
And so yeah, it's just kind of been a huge part of my life ever since I could remember. And so when people ask me, well, spooky stories, I'm like, okay, so what is your level of spooky gauge?
Right,
Because
right.
like that interaction that I had, even though when I was a kid, I was like, this is scary, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like at this point,
It wouldn't probably be scary to
no,
you. Yeah.
I would be like,
Big deal.
Like, why are you waking me up? You know my rules. My
Yeah.
office hours are 9 to 5. Like,
Yeah.
like make an appointment, you know?
That's what I've
Yeah.
had to do too at night because they like to come at night and talk to me spirits, and I'm like, nope, I'm closed from 10 a.m. to 7 a.m. You can't
Yeah.
engage with me.
You have to set those boundaries with spirits.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of people will run right for the bundle of herbs to burn or something like that. And something that I personally, particularly during this time of year,
Mm-hmm.
like to remind people is that activity is constantly fluctuating. It's
Uh-huh.
constantly going up and down. October is just more.
Mhm.
And part of that, I think, is due to the last probably 50, 60 years of just fascination that has happened with the occult. with the rise of Wicca
Right.
in the late 1930s and 50s and 60s and all that other stuff. And so now it's just gotten more and more energized. And so there's
Right.
now more energy for those spirits to tap into to manifest for us.
People are
Makes
paying
sense.
attention
Exactly.
during October, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we see that makes so much sense, huh? Uh-oh, are we having
That's okay.
we're having a mic problem?
That's okay. That's okay. You can just stay right there.
I think it's the bigger button on the bigger.
I got it.
Okay,
You can
sorry,
just stay
people.
right there. It's the dead folk.
Yeah, right.
That's what
Oh
I'm gonna
yeah,
say.
they're messing with you.
So it's been very interesting when people ask me about those, because we've done podcast. We have a podcast. We have a podcast as well.
Must be.
I think
Um,
it's the big one, like right. See the on top of that smaller one? Nope.
This one? Oh,
Oh, right. Your finger just touched it.
right there. Okay.
No, up.
Oh,
Yeah, that one.
It was fine.
But it was
we go.
fine.
Okay.
Okay.
it's just me. It's fine.
Yeah.
Weird things happen all the time around me.
That's funny.
So when people ask, I'm like, oh, I don't know. So which story do you want to hear?
Uh-huh.
So I have stories of when I was a kid, doing stupid teenage things with my my few teenage friends that I had.
Uh-huh.
I have stories of when I actually had to go through particular initiations. I actually had to perform an exorcism,
Wow.
which was very interesting because I was about 2021, and it was as part of my like an initiatory process. I had to prove.
So when you say initiatory process, for what?
So it was an initiatory process for a coven that I was a part of.
Okay.
I don't necessarily identify with this term anymore, though I don't not identify with it. I am a traditional witch,
Okay.
and a lot of people hear that term and they get freaked out.
Right.
And so I've kind of taken more of you can call me a sorcerer or a magician or
Okay.
an occultist.
It sounds softer.
Yeah, which is so
yeah.
weird because which is just something I've always used.
Uh-huh.
And so I've always identified with. And so as I was going through training in the arts of magic,
Uh-huh.
in, how to cast spells, how to work with spirits external from us, and stuff like that, I had to prove that if something got out of hand, I could handle it.
Okay.
And so picture it.
Yes.
It's the late 2000s. It's probably about 2012, 2011, 2012.
Yes.
And we're all sitting around. We had a coffee night meetup that we would all come to, and it was just kind of like a nice little Friday night coffee at
Right.
this little place called Grounds for Coffee, 30th and Harrison. And one of the coven members actually lived in an apartment building that's known to be haunted in the Ogden area.
Uh-huh.
Because it's up over by rivers, and just it was one of the Bundy grounds.
Oh, wow.
and so they were like, so I have a neighbor, and I've been having to ward more, I've been having to protect more. And so I finally just kind of met them and asked them if there was anything going on. And they were telling me about their son, and the church is refusing to help them, and
Wow.
and all this other stuff. And I told them that I would talk to you guys and see if we could potentially do something.
Mm-hmm.
And my high priestess was like, this is perfect. Austin can finally do the things he needs to do. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that means.
Right.
So we go for the initial talk, initial investigation,
Uh-huh.
whatever you want to call it, consult.
Yes.
And I watched this little 8-year-old boy. He was little teeny tiny waif of a thing
Uh-huh.
because he wasn't eating. And his parents, who were just lovely people, his dad was this huge, just shredded bodybuilder.
Yes.
I watched this kid throw his father across the room.
Oh my gosh.
And
Oh my
I
gosh.
just went,
What the heck?
Like, that's not right.
yeah,
That's
I was
creepy.
like,
I'm
well,
getting the
that's
chills.
impressive.
Yeah.
And so I actually had to perform a ritual
Wow.
where I had to contain this spirit, and
Uh-huh.
the witchcraft rituals or the more occult rituals are usually less aggressive than the Catholic Church ceremony of exorcism, mainly because the Catholic Church ceremony of exorcism really takes the point of you are no longer dealing with a child, you're dealing with a demon.
Okay.
And I didn't personally feel that this was a demonic entity within the child.
Mm-hmm.
I felt that it was some sort of spirit attachment, and this child had abilities. And so it was just getting amplified by the abilities.
Yeah.
And so I actually had to go through a process of questioning the spirit, go through a process of questioning the boy.
Oh my heck.
Thankfully, my high priestess, because of just her training, has had degrees in psychology. And so she was able to kind of sit there and like help out, so I didn't feel so weird.
Yeah.
As like, 20, 21-year-old.
Yeah, you're so young.
And, what we eventually ended up doing was just a simple separation. And what I found out was that this spirit had been in their house, or in their apartment rather, and they had tried utilizing white sage to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And all that did was open doors for everything else to come in. And indigenous spirits were angry because they were like, you're not part of our tribe. Why are you using our sacred medicine?
Oh my gosh.
And so I had to sit and like basically play mediator between the living and the dead.
Yeah.
And this nature spirit who had decided to take up residency in this child.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just flabbergasted and floored. I think one of the creepiest things that happened during that was hearing multiple voices come out of a child.
So it came out of the child's body? Like, you weren't hearing it like in your mind?
No, it was like audible.
Oh my gosh.
And part of that was interesting to me because as a, so what I originally was going to school for, my bachelor's degree was vocal pedagogy.
Wow.
So opera, I teach voice. Like, well, I don't teach voice anymore. I really don't have a studio because I've turned my focus more towards this. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And on occasion, I'll coach someone. But I'm like fully classically trained, somatic voice work. Like,
that's
like it's just something that I'm super passionate about. And so with the knowledge I had of anatomy, I was sitting there and I was like, where's that other set of vocal folds coming from? Because that's where my mind went. My mind didn't go to this poor kid.
Yes.
My mind went to, how is this scientifically possible? And so, we took care of it and got rid of it. But what I had to do was I had to extract the spirit from this child. And then I had to trap it in a vessel of some kind.
So kind of like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that's a thing then, trapping them.
Yeah.
That is so
crazy.
Interesting.
Yeah, spirit traps are most definitely a real thing. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why I have so much quartz crystal. Is because quartz crystal is a record keeper. And well, if you find the record keeper ones, which have the little ridges on it. But quartz is good at keeping memory. And so if I ever go into a place where there's a particularly angry or upset spirit who wants to remain there but cannot for whatever reason, then I will let them basically kind of go into that crystal or that stone. Yeah. Sometimes I'll bring a bone, or sometimes I'll even just use a mason jar. Whatever I got laying around. And then I will take of it and dispose of it. Or I will take it and release it where it needs to be, or where it tells me to. I've had some really interesting experiences that way. Wow. So, yeah, I think it's fascinating that people are getting more into it. I actually have a personal client of mine. Yeah. And they want to really get into all of it. And so they message me like, what would be a good exercise for this? What would I do for this? I want to see spirits. I want to see spirits. I want to see spirits. I want to interact with them. And I'm like,
are you sure?
Do you? Do you? Because everyone says that.
Right. Until it happens.
And then they freak out.
And then you're like, yeah.
So and it actually happened like a week ago.
Oh my gosh.
They sent me a message and they were like, I just saw a spirit and I'm freaking out and I don't know what to do. And all I could do, because I told them like, it's not that big a deal if you see spirits or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Because some people will see, some people won't, some people will hear, some people won't. It's okay.
Right.
And I was like, so isn't that what you wanted?
Right.
And they were just, well, not that way. And I'm like, let me guess, it showed it to you the way that they died. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's what some spirits do. Right. They show up and they can be mangled and messy or beautiful and prim. Yeah. And there's no telling how they're going to show up. Yeah. So we've had some cool experiences at the store as well. I was telling about I was telling you all about some of them, about how we caught orbs on the security cameras, which was very interesting. I think one of my most memorable experiences at the shop, though, we always do seances around this time of year. And we do them traditionally. So we use a spirit board. We have a medium, which is usually me, off in a corner covered. And I'm just functioning as a channel to get the spirits to move to the board. I'm essentially a battery for them. And we had a customer who had been coming and has seen some trials and tribulations, and their son had passed away of leukemia and just all this other stuff. And he wanted to talk to his son. And his son's name was Odin. And so he was like, I want to talk to Odin. And we were like, okay. And he was like, my son, not the god.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, cool. Because trying to talk to a god on a spirit board or a deity or anything like that is just, that's just too much. That's language that they don't need. You know?
Yeah.
And so we got this spirit to come through, and he was scared to talk.
The spirit was
scared to talk. He was just a little boy, and he, the father was asking questions like, so, and mind you, this is not just a private seance. There's probably about 15, 16 people in a room.
So do you do like a class setting kind of when you do the seances?
Usually with the seances, depending on how we do them, this was more traditional. So we had a table in the center that had our family's spirit board on it. My partner and my mother-in-law were working the board because their energy is not as crazy and frenetic as mine. And I don't really know how to work the board appropriately. I do. Well, I didn't then. I do now. Right. Because I've learned that it's much different than mediumship. And I'm just I was like, I'm just usually right behind them. And then we usually have the questioners or the querents or the clients in a circle around us. Okay. And so they have a chance to call forward one of their loved ones, and I will give messages, and the spirit will spell things on the board. And we'll get some really interesting things. But this kid came through and it was moving really slow. He was just super shy. And I could feel his little hand just holding on to mine. Why kids love me, I don't know, but they love me.
I can see why.
I can see why too, 100%.
I don't know. I guess it's just because, like, at the core of myself, I guess I'm just a big kid, which is probably why I don't want to have kids. Yes. So that's why I have a Shih Tzu and a Yorkie Poo and a cat. Like, that's it. And so I could feel this little spirit, and so I actually had to walk him to the board, and I was like, "It's okay." And so his dad was asking, "Are you okay?" Yes, I'm with the pretty lady. The board spelled out, I'm with the pretty lady. And he was like, oh, who's the pretty lady? Is it grandma so-and-so? No. Okay, is it... And he just was naming off names. No. Oh. No. And we felt the energy get heavier and colder. And now it's in the winter, so we have the heaters on in our classroom. And we have 3. We have a space heater. We have the actual split heater, and then we have a fireplace that also has a heater. Yeah. And so it's toasty. And it got cold enough that you were starting to see people's breath.
Oh my gosh.
And so we were just like, well, who's the pretty lady? And I just got this sense of just peace that came through. And it's the only time I have felt that peace is when I'm in connection with the goddess Hecate. Oh. And
how did I know you were going to say that?
I'm kind of decked out with Hecate. So, I mean, I got this. I got this. I made. I got this. I love it. I love it. But she came through, and the kid spelled Hekate. And the dad started crying. Unbeknownst to us, he had just barely set up an altar that day to her.
Wow.
I am so...
Was planning on doing a devotional ritual that night after the seance. He was full bore. He had read Keeping Your Keys by Dr. Cindy Brannon, Rite of Her Sacred Fires by Sarita Diesta. He just was full bore into it. Yes. And we all all of us just, and this is back when we were still wearing masks.
Uh-huh.
And so we all just start crying, and our masks are just getting flooded with snot and tears because just the energy that came with this and how this
That's
spirit was interacting.
amazing.
Because as soon as she came through, his energy picked up, and he was like, she takes care of me. She watches over me. She's making sure that I'm safe and that I'm healing. Like, he's just going off on this. And the dad's crying.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know I was crying because I was in a trance state, but I came out of it and I was like, why am I wet? You know, why am I leaking? My mother-in-law, my partner, everyone there is just crying.
Wow.
And it was this really shared experience. And so that's not spooky, but it's visceral.
Yes.
And I've had experiences with Hecate that would be considered scary because during that same seance, a trickster spirit came through, and it wasn't just a normal trickster spirit that was like,
okay, so what's a trickster spirit? Explain that to all of us.
So a trickster spirit is a spirit that doesn't necessarily have a leaning one way or another. A lot of people will say that they're malefic or that they mean harm, but really it's just within their nature.
Okay.
So think fairy. You know, trickster spirits are spirits that like to cause a little bit of chaos, that like to shake things up.
Okay.
Even if we look at the indigenous people mythology around what a trickster spirit is, they're always there to teach us lessons. And most of the time the lesson is, why are you taking yourself so seriously?
Oh,
you know,
interesting.
And this trickster spirit came through, and it was not a fun kind of trickster spirit. It was trying to like hijack the board. It was making sounds, and it was just not good. And so I actually was pulled out of the trance, and I evoked Hecate. I called to her to take it away. And in the middle of it spelling out the F slur, because it did not like me, it stopped and went to goodbye. The planchette did.
Wow.
So we've had some really interesting experiences.
Wow.
Those are incredible stories.
You've done a lot.
Experienced a ton, right?
I have a lot of experiences, and I look forward to more experiences because there are times, and there are people who ask me all the time, well, how do you make this your life? And I'm like, well, I'm not in it to make money. The fact that I can pay my bills, great, awesome, you know? But my biggest thing is truth. I'm seeking truth. I'm seeking compassion, justice, healing. That's part of my job, part of my great work as a witch.
Yes.
Is to heal, is to guide, is to help, to dissolve misinformation.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
And so when I have people who come in to the shop, there's a spirit in my house. And my first question is, has it hurt you?
Yeah.
Most of the time, no, but it bothers me. Have you told it to stop?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I'm like, have you told it to stop? Or have you you need to stop? Have you done it with fear? Because if you've done it with fear, then
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And it's not that you need to be mean or aggressive. I mean, you don't have to go full Zach Bagans.
But, just assertive.
Just assertive, very affirming. Like, you need to leave me alone.
Yeah.
If you wish to speak with me, when I wear this ring, when I light this candle, then you may speak with me.
Right.
Other than that, you have a job.
Yep.
Do this job. If you're not going to do this job, rinse due at the beginning of the month.
Yep.
Or I'm kicking you out.
Right.
Right.
That's great.
So, yeah, I feel like I've just been rambling. So please. Ask me
No, I
questions
love
and stuff.
it. I love it. I every time we have a new guest, I just learn so much, and I love that that your family embraced you.
They didn't really have a choice. I didn't give them a choice, and neither did my grandparents.
Yeah.
Because my dad is he's fairly atheistic.
Oh.
He doesn't disagree necessarily with anything that I do. He loves and supports me and my partner and all the things that we choose to do.
Right.
He stops into the shop on occasion and hangs out with us and thinks what we do is neat, but he just doesn't get it.
Yeah.
But he also grew up in the South, and so his idea of what spiritual practice is dancing with snakes and speaking in tongues and you know, everything's dark and evil and demonic.
Right.
Whereas on my mom's side, when we immigrated over from Avellino, Italy, my nonna would have practiced what is called benedicaria, which is it's like Catholic. it's Italian Roman Catholic witchcraft is essentially what it is.
Okay.
Where it's all about healing and it's all these things, but it's a way that our ancestors maintained our historical roots to the ancient witch cults of Yonara,
Wow.
so that we wouldn't be killed by the church.
Wow.
And most of the time, the eldest son or the child born with the cowl on their head would be raised to become a priest
Okay.
or a man of the cloth. And it's just interesting how that all works out, because I never planned on becoming a priest. I never planned on any of that. And then what ended up happening was I went through levels of initiation. I didn't become a Catholic priest, but I became a priest.
Right.
You know?
Right, technically.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm technically a Wiccan priest, and and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So it's funny how that all worked out. But my nonna was very adamant that we go back to the old ways. And so she'd always be, it was always funny because she would pray the rosary, but instead of Hail Mary full of grace, it was Hail Diana full of light, until someone else came in. Cool. Then it was Hail Mary. She was a very funny woman, my nonna, with 3 very angry Shih Tzus who made me very scared of Shih Tzus, and now I have one and I love them.
Right. No, I love that you've grew up around that and you've embraced it. And so that is how, and I know you said you don't do this for money, because I don't either.
Yeah.
I just want to help. I'm same. I want to help people and get messages out there, and let's all become a great community, spiritual community together with whatever that is, however you spirit. But you've been fortunate to where you can make a living off of it. And I love that.
It's kind of one of those things where I'll take a minute and I'll look at some of the other, not necessarily other shops or other like big name practitioners out there. Like one of my friends that I've studied under and worked with is Devin Hunter, who wrote the entire Witch Power series, and Storm Fairy Wolf, who is one of my Reiki teachers, who has written several books, Chaz Bogan, and like all these other people. And I look at them and I don't necessarily want to be where they're at. But then there are other people who I do look at sometimes in the community and I'm like, you really are just in it for the money.
Yeah.
And it just, it tears me apart because unfortunately there are people out there who have no problem spending thousands upon thousands of dollars for the magic answer.
Yes.
But then they come and they'll get a reading with me and I'm like, no, you don't need to do magic in this situation. You need therapy.
Yeah.
For sure.
You know, or no, nothing needs to happen. You just need to lay low and like let it be, you know? And what ends up happening is they go and they shop around to get readings from other people and practitioners who eventually will just say, $1,000, I'll make your husband come back to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And
yeah.
And it's always such a horrible feeling to me because they'll get involved with these unethical practitioners.
Yes.
And they get taken advantage of, and then inevitably they end up coming back to me and they're like, this, and this happened. And I'm like,
I told you.
I told you that you needed to just let it be.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I try not to do the I told you so thing. Now, if it's a client who's been a client of mine for years.
You can say that,
then,
Then you can get in their face.
Then they get the sassy gay best friend. They get, girl, I told you, he ain't that good.
Right.
You know? But it's just so interesting because there's such a need for the spiritual practice and magic now more than ever.
I agree.
And when we see how it gets taken advantage of and other people get taken advantage of, that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. Because it's not like we're making 6 figures a year. I am not making bank off of anyone's spiritual practice.
Right.
I make enough to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I make enough to maybe get myself a Starbucks on occasion.
Right.
If you see me in the shop, you think Starbucks a lot or coffee a lot, but that's simply because, well, I'm spoiled.
Yes.
My partner likes to get me fancy coffees.
Yes. And if you love it, why not?
Exactly. You know.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where when we look at how spirituality can help people heal and grow, I see damage being done as well. And a lot of it comes from people who are just leaving like a church or an organized religion. And instead of allowing themselves to grow and to spread and maybe figure out what parts of those things worked for them and what parts of those things didn't, there's two extremes that happen. There's the extreme of, well, now I'm the guru. Now I am the bishop and I am the prophet and you shall listen to me, or complete and total just atheism. And all of it's horrible. None of it's real.
It's one extreme or the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you find those people who are just really trying to work their way through it and they're willing to listen, it's such a nice little gem for me. Because then I get the ability to go, okay, well, so you want to work with this particular deity or this particular spirit. Are you aware that you're approaching them the way that you would approach like the Abrahamic God? Well, isn't that how you approach all gods? No. Hecate does not want you to bow in subservience to her.
Yeah.
She's far too busy for that. She's a primordial being. And so a lot of people think it's just really funny because I have a more elaborate ritual process for myself, or if I'm performing a public ritual, then I will do a little bit more of an elaborate rite. But most of the time for me, it's a simple meditation with my mala over here that I made. And that's that. And then sometimes she comes through and she's like, yeah, you should probably not order the pizza. And I'm like, it's great. But I'm the one who wants the pizza, and I'm the one who did 9 readings today.
So I deserve the
I'm
pizza.
going to order the pizza. And most of the time, there's probably going to be weird things happening on the
I know. I keep
touching it.
bumped in mine. That's okay.
But she wants you to be empowered to make your own choices. And so when people see how I interact with deities and spirits, just like another regular living being,
right?
It's like it confuses them, or it sets them off, or makes them uncomfortable. Because we are the living people here in the living world, in the mundane world. Most of the time, gods, spirits, angels, guides, they don't understand, you need money to live, food to survive, water to survive, air to breathe. They don't understand that, which is why we also have horror stories of fairy. Fairy, they're not evil.
No.
It's just in their nature. And just same with demons and daemons. It's just in their nature. They're not out there to get you and ruin your life. They're just doing what they literally were made to do and to be.
They're doing their job.
They're doing their job. And I've had interactions with angelic entities and demonic entities. I'm going to tell you right now, it is much easier, more efficient to work with a demonic entity, because they're like, I just really would like this really pretty golden pocket watch, and I will make all your dreams come true. And you're like, oh, great, here. And then they're like, awesome, great.
But
6 months it's going to happen. And I'm like, cool. And then 6 months it happens. Whereas angelic entities, you're like, I really just need everything to pop off. And they're like, you are already all you need. And you're like,
Wait
that's
a minute.
deep, but also I'm not high enough for this. So it's very interesting what has been put out there.
Yeah.
And I find myself watching shows like Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Dead Files, which is one of my favorites.
Yes.
And I'm like, how? Like, this is what people think this stuff actually is.
Yeah.
And so every single time someone comes in and they have a spirit attachment, it's a demon. And I'm like, you're not that special, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a little parasitic entity that you picked up because you had a little bit too much to drink. You blacked out. It was like, this is easy food.
Yeah.
Now I'm here, And so it's very interesting to see those extremes and see where people go, and how, as a practitioner, I'm here to help guide that and help dissolve some of that fear.
Yes.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I also suck at telling scary stories. One of the scary stories that I would like to share
please.
happened just a couple weeks ago at home.
Okay.
So I live in a house that's just witchcraft everywhere. Just witchcraft everywhere. Every person in my house, I'm thoroughly convinced, even the dogs, are psychic in some level.
Yes.
And so my altar is downstairs, and that's where I do the majority of my work. And so downstairs is always usually pretty quiet for me. Upstairs gets a little noisy, and I think that's just because who lives upstairs generally tends to attract spirits, just because their energy. She's a medium. She grew up in a Catholic orphanage, and so like she has ability, but it was like stuffed down and like traumaed out of her. And so I'm just downstairs, and my partner's upstairs with mom, and I'm having a good night. I think I had ordered like pizza or something. Pizza's kind of like, it always happens with pizza. No,
Yeah.
I
don't know.
Pizza.
Me too. We had pizza last night, and I was like, this is what I needed. And so, Marcos, if you want to become a sponsor for this podcast and our podcast, I will totally let that happen.
Yeah.
I love Marcos Pizza. Anyway, so
They have one pretty close.
yeah, I love Marcos. Their crust.
I've
Anyway,
never tried it. I'll have
They're
to try
so
it. There's
good.
just one
They're so good. They're so good.
couple
If you're
lights
low
over.
carb,
Yeah.
like-
Yes.
Like if you're low carb, they literally just have a pizza bowl where it's the toppings and the cheese.
Oh,
Okay.
that
So,
sounds yummy.
For all you keto people out there.
Yes, that sounds
Keto
delicious.
is not for me. Not for me. But I am too Italian. I love rice and pasta far
Yeah.
too much. But I was just downstairs, and it was quiet, and you know, it's a house, so like you can hear someone's walking upstairs.
Right.
But there was this loud bang. Like it sounded like a gunshot.
Oh.
And I just sat there for a second. And I was like, is that? And the dogs reacted to it. The animals reacted to it. And so I got up. I left the dogs outside, and I'm going upstairs, and I'm like, oh God, what happened? And both my partner and my mother-in-law are just wandering around the house going, what did you drop downstairs? And I was like, I didn't drop anything.
What
That
did you
came from up
drop?
here. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
And so the door shut, and we were just like, season of the witch, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what happens. And when you get a group of people who have those abilities and have been doing it for as long as we have,
Yeah.
you get us all into the same space. Something's
It's a lot
bound
of
to pop
energy,
off.
right?
Yeah, something's bound to pop off.
There's always weird stuff going on when we're trying to podcast.
Yeah.
Like nothing ever wants to work or
We have technical difficulties. Yeah.
I could definitely see that happens in our podcast as well.
Yes.
Actually, the last episode we recorded, our shop spirit, William, he was being noisy.
You're like,
He was
shut up.
being noisy upstairs. Like I heard the shop door open, and I'm like, I know that's impossible because I locked it. I heard walking around upstairs. I heard the bathroom door open and close, and I'm just like, I'm sitting here and I'm looking around. You can see me looking around the podcast.
Yeah.
And you know, I got my partner and my bestie over here talking about the astrology, and I'm just looking around, just. Why are you so loud? You know, so it's very interesting. I think one of the scariest stories, one of the scariest experiences I personally have had. I don't want to say it was scary, unnerving.
Yes.
Unnerving would be a better term for it. A few years back, me and two friends decided that we were going to do something for my birthday. As a business owner, I don't get to do much for my birthday. And on top of that, it's just another day.
Yeah.
You know, it's another day. I got a little bit older.
I'm here for another year.
You know, great, awesome. And so it's summer. I'm a June baby. And so they're like, well, let's just go on a short little hike. You know, nothing too intense. Just go up into Cottonwood Canyon, and we'll just kind of meander around, and then we'll go and we'll get pedicures and manicures, and we'll get some lunch, and then we'll head back here, and you have a class tonight, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're up in Cottonwood Canyon, and we're wandering around, and as we go, we're picking up trash because that's what we do.
That's amazing.
And I just get this weird sense of you need to leave.
Really?
And first off, no.
You're
I'm
interrupting my
enjoying
birthday.
nature. I have literally let myself sit down in the river that it's up there. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm enjoying myself.
Right.
And so I turned and I was talking to my two friends, and I was like, do you guys feel that? And they're like, it's interesting because we actually had an ulterior motive to bring you up here. And I was like, of course you did. And so I was like, okay, so what are we going to do? And they were like, we want you to lead us to where you think the spooky place is. And I was like,
oh, geez.
like of course.
this is not the first time this has happened. This happened a couple years ago as well in New Orleans. And so I was like, okay. So I get out of the river and I'm walking. I don't have shoes on because shoes are feet prisons, which is why I wear flip-flops pretty much year round. I need to feel the connection to the earth.
Yes.
Also, I overheat really easily. And apparently I just exude a lot of heat from my feet.
Yeah, when your feet, no, I get that. Yeah.
But so I'm walking and I find like this old mill, like this old mill place. And like, it looks like this is where they like stored machinery or something. And I just got the ugh.
Yeah.
Like every part of my being was going, get out, leave. You're not supposed to be here. And I saw this woman inside this, what looked like a little shack. I saw her and I was like, do you need help? And so, of course, there's like other hikers, and I'm sitting here talking to the shed,
nothing.
and I have two of my friends who are picking up trash, and I'm just like disheveled as hell. And I'm just like, do you need help? And she says, he's coming. He's coming. And I was like, Who?
Yeah.
The bad man. I'm like,
oh no.
Okay, bad man. Who bad man?
Right.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm like trying to talk with this spirit. And of course, I'm trying to talk as a living person. So I'm like logicking this spirit. And they're just not getting it because they're caught in this trauma loop, this feedback. And then I turn because I hear my friend say something. And I turn back and she's gone. And I'm, okay, interesting. So I climb down and I get closer and I'm going around and I'm picking up trash. And the door to this, what looks like shed, swings open. And you can hear leave. And the two friends who were with me actually went, did you tell us that we need to leave? And I went, no, it's this chick over here. It's the spirit. And she goes, you're not safe. And I went, are you talking about Ted Bundy? And her spirit got small and she went, don't say his name.
Why did I feel like you were?
I know.
And so this was a victim
of Ted
Bundy, this spirit. And I went, do you want help? And she said, you can't help me. And I went, well, I don't think that's true. I'm a witch. I can do a lot.
Right.
So I did a small little prayer and evocation to Hecate. And the spirit softened. And she was like, I'm going to follow you guys out. And we were like, okay. So she's walking with us at this point and basically attached her to me. So that she can use my energy. And we're severing this bond from this traumatic location that she had.
Wow.
And she's coming with me, and there are people who are looking at me weird. And so we stop and we get into the parking lot, just outside of this little hiking trail. And she goes, I can't go with you. And I went, oh, well, you're not going with us. I'm going to send you home. And she was like, you can't do that. And I said, do you want me to? Do you want to go home? Or do you want to stay here? I don't want to stay here. I want to go home to my mom. And I said, okay, then you need to trust me. And so me and my friends, they were members of my covenant at that point. We linked up arms and we actually like raised some energy and did a ritual to cross the spirit over.
That's awesome.
And so as we left, we were driving and we kept seeing doves, morning doves. And for me, when I'm doing readings for people, especially medium mystic readings, when I see morning doves, it tells me that the spirit is now at peace and they have left. And so it was really cool and really validating. But I think the scariest part of that situation was she was actively trying to make herself scary.
Okay. Yeah.
Because she didn't want anyone disturbing this place. There was enough trauma that was there.
Right.
And the
she was trying to scare you away, basically. Yeah.
And the reason she interacted with me was because I was picking up trash, and she's like, "You're not others." I'm like, "No." and this is like just the experience with spirits that I have.
That's amazing, though, that you were able to help her.
You know, I tried, and I actually found out who it was. I can't remember her name.
You did?
Her name's not Mildred. Can't remember what her name was, but she was childless.
Uh-huh.
And I was actually guided to her grave,
Wow.
whilst on a mission
Yes.
from my mother-in-law. So I was out one day and I was running some errands, and there's this beautiful big cemetery like further over that way somewhere. I don't know what it was called.
Was it up east?
I think so.
Yeah.
Very much Orem Provo area.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know
Very
about that.
Mormon,
area.
very white, very
Yeah.
bougie. I was like,
Fancy.
yeah, fancy. I'm like, this is a waste of land. Like, just clean it yourself, man. Like, ashes to ashes for a reason.
Right.
And I was looking for one of my mother-in-law's friends
Uh-huh.
who had recently passed, who had contacted her. And so I'm like wandering around this graveyard.
Uh-huh.
Just, I don't know anyone in this graveyard. And I find this woman's headstone. I'm like, why does this look familiar? Why does this sound familiar? Why does this feel familiar? And so, of course, good old Google.
Yeah.
So I get on Google, found out she was one of the last victims of Ted Bundy.
Oh my gosh.
Before the one who got away.
Wow.
And I was like, that's creepy.
Uh-huh.
And she actually led me to the unmarked grave of my mother-in-law's friend.
So you helped her and she helped you.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. That's so amazing.
Not spooky stories, but cool stories about how spirits are.
That spirit, yeah. No, I love that. That is so fun. Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
we've had our share of like spookiness, so I guess it doesn't really
Yeah,
scare
yeah.
us either.
Well,
No.
and that's the thing. It's like people always want to hear the crazy stories.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And for me, the big crazy stories aren't the meaningful stories.
Exactly.
Those are just experiences that make you go, oh, this is real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But then there's stories of like the healing work that can be done, and the resolution and the closure. And, you know, we've had some really cool, very interesting things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the actual things that have put me a little on edge
Mm-hmm.
or made me feel uncomfortable haven't actually happened at random.
Mm-hmm.
It's things where I've actively done some sort of working or ritual,
Uh-huh.
and it's become a validation.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So like,
I love that.
so there's this book by Jack Grail called The Hecateon.
Uh-huh.
It is an entire devotional grimoire to the goddess Hecate. Big, is most definitely not everyone's cup of tea. It's also very expensive. I spent like $100 on my first copy and $75 on my second, and I think that is the most I've ever spent on a book that wasn't for college. My music theory textbook was about $450, and we used it once. I still have it in the back seat of my car, I think. But we were doing this right. We were doing this working, and when you work with Hecate, she carries a horde of spirits with her.
Okay.
Both restless dead, rested dead, empowered dead. That's what she does. She's a psychopomp. So she
Okay.
carries these spirits with her, and we're all sitting here, me and my crew, and we just finished this ritual, and we're sitting where you take a minute to meditate,
Right.
and we feel this thing moving around our workspace.
Mm-hmm.
And at first we're like, oh, well, I mean, we're in the coven space, so obviously there's spirits here, you know?
Right.
But this thing is like lurking.
Okay.
And our spirits aren't activated. Like, they're not telling us it's nasty.
Uh-huh.
And so we're like, okay, so we're kind of delving into it a little bit, and we're each kind of filling it out and all this other stuff. And it starts to get a little bit more pushy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I tell it like, you know, you need to just go outside. I know
Right.
you're a nature spirit. I'm glad you're here and this drew you. Go outside. I will bring you out some water. I'll bring you out some cornmeal. I'll give you an offering tomorrow. We'll be fine.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it leaves. Well, in our classroom space, which was also the temple space, we have two entrances. We have the entrance to the front, which is where everyone else comes in.
Uh-huh.
We have an entrance that leads into my backyard at the shop. And
I was there. I did your painting.
yeah.
So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so going into the backyard, you know, I have lots of poisonous plants in the back. I have a big bush of wormwood. I got black henbane. I got datura. And all these things like grow wild here.
Uh-huh.
So it's not like I'm doing anything wrong or illegal. But I use them in my magics.
Right.
And in medicine, because henbane and datura are really good nerve pain relievers.
Wow.
And for those of you who can see my ankle scar, I have really bad nerve damage in my ankle from destroying it years ago, breaking
Wow.
it. But I opened up the back door because I think I was like disposing of something. I think we had something that I had burned and we needed to get rid of it. And so I was going to take it out back. And there were muddy hoof prints
Hoof prints?
that led
Whoa.
up to the back door.
Oh my.
And we were like,
Huh.
that's interesting.
For
So we've
sure.
had some really cool, interesting things like
is
that.
crazy.
Yeah, I get more experiences in ritualistic or magical settings than I do just at random. And
Uh-huh.
I think part of that's because I've spent years honing and training my ability
Yeah.
so that I'm not a live wire all the time, because that's exhausting.
Yeah.
Oh,
It is
Yeah.
exhausting going into a grocery store or going into
And just being attacked by
just being like, oh my God.
not attacked, but yeah.
I feel like that happens to me
Yeah.
sometimes because I'm like, I get out of here.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the reasons why I teach, is because there are a lot of people who get overwhelmed by those spirits and
Mhm.
overwhelmed by those energies, and I can totally understand that. I can totally understand
Yeah.
getting overwhelmed, but it's in those moments of overwhelm where we actually sit and we allow ourselves to feel the feel what we're
Mhm.
feeling, that we
Yeah.
can actually properly navigate how to address the situation.
Yeah. That's so amazing. So we're about out of time.
Okay.
Let's tell me your podcast. Tell everybody what your podcast is.
So our podcast is the Salty Witches Podcast by Cat and Cauldron. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, and other major streaming services. We discuss all things metaphysical, paranormal, occult, astrology oriented. We do get a little salty because, well, we're salty.
Right.
But we are trying to turn over a new leaf and be a little bit more soft. So for those of you who usually need a little bit more of a fun thing or softer thing, we
Yeah.
are getting there. We do readings and stuff there. And Cat and Cauldron is located on 1922 West, 4700 South in Taylorsville, Utah. We have a whole array of handmade goods and products. We teach classes. We do rituals. You name it, we have it. If we don't, we'll direct you to a place who has it, or we'll get it for you for a better price.
Yeah. It's super cute shop.
Yeah,
Chelsea
and
took me there.
I love that Hecate statue that you have.
Oh, yeah?
Every time I go there, I'm like, it's so pretty.
Which one?
She's like,
Is she the one with the torch and she's a little sexier?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
See?
kind of like into that seductive.
I can totally get that, and I've never really enjoyed the big statue of it. I have the miniature statue of it because for like travel work,
Uh-huh.
but she changes every single time. So when anyone brings out or creates a new visage of her, I'm just like, I mean, yeah, sure, they're in connection, because she is so multifaceted that
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Wow.
Like, people even try and correct me on how to pronounce her name. You can say Hecate, you can say Hecate, you can say Hecate, which is the technical correct pronunciation because ancient Greek didn't have an H. But you know, it's cool. So I'm glad. You know, thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Yes.
And you are Spirit.
How do you spirit?
Spirit?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Awesome. We'll shout you out on our podcast tonight.
yes, please.
Awesome.
And we would love to tag you on our posts too.
Awesome, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll tag you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tag Cat and Cauldron. Tag
Cat and Cauldron.
Yes.
Okay.
Austin, right?
Not, I mean, if you want, you can tag me too. Cat and Cauldron, you're gonna get a little bit more flow because
Yeah.
Right.
that's our brand and that's what
Right.
we're most associated with.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Awesome.
People are always like, you need to have your own brand, and so like I have my Facebook page, Austin Tony Spiritualist.
Yes.
Yeah, you need to write a book or something.
You
Oh,
should.
God.
You should.
So interesting
I-
just sitting here listening.
I
to
know.
you.
I'm just like, huh?
I sat down and started writing like my own Reiki manuals for my students.
Uh-huh.
And then I became certified through the ICRT, the International Center for Reiki Training. And now I just use their manuals. I'm like, this is much less crazy for me and
Right.
much more legible and less grammatically incorrect for my students.
Yes.
So my partner is most definitely the writer.
Yeah.
And,
Well, you could tell him your story, and then he can translate it for
he
you on
has
paper.
so much already. He's about 12 years older than me, and so he has some more
Tons.
experiences.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he has an experience of how a like an actual interaction with a demonic entity.
Wow.
When he was growing up, and how it would actually run across his neighbor's roof.
Oh my gosh.
And he would see it as a kid, and he went to look out the window one time and it was gone. And then he turned and looked back, and then just red eyes
was
were
right
right
in his
there.
front.
Yeah.
Whoa,
So
that
he's
would
had
be
some pretty
terrifying.
freaky experiences. Same with my mother-in-law. They have they have a lot of interesting experiences.
Wow.
I guess I'm just like, oh, I guess that's normal for me. But it was normal for him growing up too.
That's
Yeah.
it's interesting that you have each other, that you can,
Oh, it's
you
so
know,
great.
you understand each other,
It is
and
so awesome.
yes.
We had a friend over last night, and I'm just sitting there and I'm just talking to this spirit, and he's like, yep. And it's just this very cool just interaction of being in a relationship with someone who also
gets it.
Yes.
Yes.
Because I don't have to, like, after my reader shift, because again, I'm busy.
Yeah.
After my reader shift, I don't have to come home and go, I need you to not talk to me for a minute.
Right.
I come home and he goes, welcome home, babe. And I go, hi. And then he lets me do my nightly ritual to decompress, which
Yes.
usually involves a little bit of junk food. And
Pizza. No.
Yeah, pizza and usually some really shitty paranormal shows.
Yeah.
Love those, right?
That's so cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes. You've been so much fun. I love it.
Well,
and
thank
you made that necklace.
Yeah. I'm actually taking a course right now called The Sorcery of Hecate by Jason Miller, and so he's one of my mentors, and this is part of the course.
Oh my gosh, I love
And,
it. It's so cool.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things, and it's my partner's like, you should just wear that for ritual, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
special.
It's gaudy and I love it.
Right? No,
It is
it's
really pretty.
fabulous. I
Thank
love
you.
it. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone. We are also on all of the podcast platforms. Go find us, check us out, and visit our YouTube page, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram at How Do You Spirit, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you. Happy witching.
Yes.